If I'm quiet for a few moments, appreciate it. It won't last for long. I'm never quite sure when this recording has started. So, I want to wish you an amazing day. We're only a few hours in here. If grief is the language we speak, our relationship to the one who has died and the way they died is the dialect. The other day while I was cutting the grass, it's a big lawn, so I had a lot of time to think about this. This kept going around in my head. At the same time, it hasn't left me alone. It's been sort of knocking at my door, so to speak, for the past few days, which is why you're going to hear about it now. So I think about some of the amazing people that I've talked to over the years as clients, as friends. I, English is the language that we have in common. I think about my friends in Australia, Canada, England, Scotland, Ireland, various places in the United States, and more. We each are speaking our own version of English. And there's usually a bit of laughter and, and some good natured ribbing as we explain what certain languages or phrases mean. Because even though we're using similar words, it may have different meaning. Even where I live right now, it's only 5 short hours away from where I lived a few months ago, and some of the things are different. There's a slightly different dialect. Many places my husband and I go, people will say, wow, y'all aren't from here, are you? Y'all? That's not part of my language. I say shed, they say mini barn. A little bit of conversation, we understand one another. So sometimes I will hear people say, for instance, to me, because I think about losing my son, Mike, to suicide, only another mom understands this. Only another mom understands losing her child to suicide. Let's see how far we can go down this rabbit hole. Only another mom who has lost her son. How about only another mom who has lost the youngest of her 3 sons? Okay, we're getting closer and closer to someone who's very much like me. How about another mom who was about to turn 50 years old, who was married to an amazing man who's a fireman, lieutenant on, let's get really specific, a lieutenant on his department, who has 2 other sons, 25 and 6 years old, and I can get very specific about their names and their careers, who lives in a colonial house in the city of Milwaukee, who has a boxer dog. Do you see how specific I can get? Even if I get, Even if I sit in a room with someone who on paper or in conversation looks as close to me as possible, their experience with grief, with grieving, with healing is going to be different than mine because they cannot possibly have the same relationship exactly that I had with my son, that I have with all of the other people in my world. They cannot possibly have exactly the same experiences I have had up until that loss and since that loss. Will we have much in common? We absolutely will. At the same time, I think about, does that mean I have to look for a group that has lost a parental figure from which they were largely estranged but strongly connected and loved very much? Is that the only way I can grieve that loss? What about the loss of friendships? Do I need to find someone who specifically understands that? I think about the people that I know and care about, some of which are friends, really close friends, some of which are clients. Do I need to only work with those who have had specifically the same loss. No, I'm very fortunate that I've not lost my life partner, my spouse, my husband. But I absolutely work with those who have lost that connection. I'm blessed and grateful. I've lost one child. I know so many who've lost more. If grief is our language, with a little bit of conversation, with opening up our hearts, we absolutely have the ability and the room to express to one another and to support one another, to walk arm in arm that path of healing. In fact, for many, it can be really, really helpful to understand that, again, I'm going to use this sort of loss that's most made the deepest and most profound difference in my life, the loss of my son to suicide. It was often as though somebody was trying to drop off a sack full of shame, taboo, stigma, blame, guilt. Guess what? I refused delivery. But guess what? It's not only parents or friends or loved ones who have lost someone to suicide that have that package of guilt or shame or stigma. Maybe something different. Maybe something's added and something's taken out. I've talked to so many people, worked with so many people who feel like it's not okay to enjoy this event. After all, it's too early in their grief. They have no right to do that. Plop. There's the guilt. There's the shame. How about the person who said, oh my gosh, I didn't ask the doctor about this treatment. I didn't tell the doctor to do that. Plop. There's the guilt. I'm sure you see where this goes. Regardless of how the person we love died, regardless of what our relationship is with them, we can learn to understand the dialect of others who are grieving and are trying to heal their hearts. We open up to these experiences. We open up to the possibilities that we can understand them and they can and do understand us. This doesn't in any way negate these connections. In fact, from my personal experience, it helps us to have a broader understanding. It forges even stronger, more resilient bonds. We are humans having an incredibly painful human experience. And when we share with one another, when we work together to offer support, to rest for a while, maybe alongside the same bench, and listen, to offer our hand in support and compassion, to share the wisdom that we've learned without judgment. When we help one another to release judgment, there goes the blame, there goes the shame, there goes the guilt. When we remember that grief is not the only language we speak, or maybe it is the language. So where would healing come under there? I don't feel like it's a separate language. It's part of the same. We have so much more in common than we sometimes think. Yes, you are the only person who knows exactly how you feel at this moment right now. As you're thinking about the person you're missing, as you think about your relationship, as you think about the relationships you have with other people. But when we share with one another, we learn to understand your dialect. Believe me, when somebody was first talking to me about a mini barn, I had to ask them 2 or 3 times what they were talking about. I'm sure I didn't look like the brightest bulb in the box, but we laughed about it a little bit. All right, I laughed about it a lot, and they just sort of shook their head as I began to understand, oh, it's a shed. It makes sense. And then when we understood what we were both talking about, we understood, oh, it's a place to keep your tools. Perhaps it's a place to begin your garden or to work on your plants. And there's many other purposes. The language we were using, each one a slightly different version of English, is easily understood by one another if we're open to understanding and sharing. Yeah, grief is the common language that we speak. As we speak, communicate with one another, we not only begin to understand one another's dialect, our ear sort of tunes to it, and it's second nature. We all have hearts that are beating in our chest, hearts that can heal as we're willing to work with one another. Down below here, I'm going to put a link to my private Facebook group. This group is for anybody who is open to the possibility of life on the other side and who wants to continue their connection with their loved ones. I hope you join me. For today, I wish you a very gentle day, a day of understanding that more communication with others who are open to understanding is healing for everybody involved. I'm Sandy Weldon from Serenity, Master Grief Coach and Master Grief Coach Trainer. Namaste.